Natisawis. I am Berta Welch from Niobe, Martha's Vineyard. I was born and raised in Aquinnah, the town furthest western of Martha's Vineyard. At one time, our people lived throughout Martha's Vineyard, and for that matter, what is now called Massachusetts and Rhode Island. But over time, our tribe was pushed up to this area here. My inspiration for doing my work comes from the history of New England Native people, our people, as well as my parents, who were both artists themselves. My mother made pottery from the Gayhead Clay Cliffs, which was then later sold. It was an industry here that many Native families did to make a living, selling to tourists. And that allowed her to make enough money to go to college, where she became an occupational therapist and then worked in Massachusetts, but then was hired out in Tacoma, Washington at the Indian Hospital. And she lived a number of years out there until she went to Mexico and met our father in a small town called Tasco, Mexico, which is the silver mining area at that time for Mexico. And my father was a sterling silver artist, jewelry maker. So that is where I get my inspiration. So through history, our tribe and other New England tribes made what is called wampum, wampum beads that were either sewn into belts or were just worn as necklaces and used to give to other tribes with a message of peace or of history or a decision that had been made. So these beads were hand done by various people within each community, and people who were of importance in that community were well adorned with these beads. So the traditional beads were handmade from this section of the shell. Again, no electricity back in those days, no metal. What was used to make them was the inside of a conch shell for the needle, which then created the hole through the quahog shell, the wampum, and then that bead was rolled into a cylindrical shape. What I do is more contemporary, cutting the shell, sanding the shell, using electric sanding belts to shape, and then I add other shells and stones to create my work. So I chair for our small cultural museum here in Aquinnah, Wampanoag History, the Aquinnah Cultural Center. And we have given a number of classes that I have been involved in showing people how to work with a shell. And there has been a number of people from those courses that did continue working in the jewelry, making jewelry. My son and daughter also make the jewelry, my son more so now. My daughter is a new mom, so doesn't have the time that she used to have. But there's a number of people in our community that are quite skilled at making beads. "2020 has certainly been a struggle for everyone. I think for me, it has reminded me that through history, it's not our first pandemic. It has allowed me to really reflect back and do some reading and really read more about what happened in the 16th century, 17th century, 18th century to our people. And so that has been sad, and yet I really feel proud of a resiliency that we have, and how these tough times can bring people together. And I am proud of that in our community, as individual Native people, we've really been able to bond during this time. So what I would like to do is show pieces that I've made that have incorporated other shells. This is a shell called the lion's paw. And this is the shell we call wampum. So the quahog shell that we're fortunate to have this really beautiful purple lip. The backside is what gets completely grinded off, and then we're able to cut it and start shaping it. So using both the wampum, what we call wampum, and the lion's paw, and some other shells like mother of pearl, I was able to create these. Using mother of pearl, and again the quahog shell and abalone, I was able to create these, which are kind of fun because when you wear them, they move, they dance. Another ones that I made have the abalone and a little bit of the spiny oyster shell, and then they're backed and the melon shell. And then sometimes I just create what I feel is the shape speaks to me. And this is pretty much all out of the lion's paw. And at some point I'll incorporate some wampum into it. And these earrings are, again, the wampum with spiny oyster shell, mother pearl, and abalone. Not so much pieces, but our community has come across over the years the miscultural appropriation. There's this great a great influx of people who are non-native, who are creating jewelry and calling it wampum. And it has become a community talking point right now of how to address this. I think as a community, we have begun the discussions of how to approach it, how to teach people what cultural appropriation is, how to teach them how not to use our language or our culture, our religion, and incorporate it into their own. I think we have a number of people who are clearly talented in working with the shell itself, but really need to understand that there is a long history to Native people of this area, and wampum. Thank you for having me in this show. It's been an honor, and if you want to reach me, you can Google me or see my email address.